Morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network, and today's topic is coherence versus boundaries. We talk about healthy boundaries, but any kind of boundary is a constraint and an obstruction, and is perpetuating separation. And yet we want to be sure that our energy is our own, and I am becoming more and more aware that coherence seems to be an approach that allows for that integrity, that fortification, while not creating constraints and obstruction. So we get to figure this out, talk through it together. But before we get started, let's just take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning. Good morning, Shosha. Good morning, Rosalind. So great to have you here with us this morning. We are talking about boundaries or coherence. So this is a kind of a recent articulation that's coming forward. I've always had a bit of an issue with. Good morning, Jennifer. Welcome. So good to have you here with us this morning. I've always had a bit of an issue with this notion of boundaries. I need to set boundaries, or I had no boundaries, or I need to have healthier boundaries. And when we think about boundaries, what is it about them that appeals to us? When we're talking about having to have healthy boundaries, the underlying conversation is a conversation about safety and protection and threat, right? We feel threatened, so we set up boundaries that protect us or fortify us against the onslaught of whatever these other influences are. And it's important, I think, to recognize that while boundaries may keep things out, they're also keeping us in. They're keeping us kind of locked in as well. And the times that we experience the need or desire for boundaries, I tend to believe there are times when our energy is chaotic, when we don't know. I don't know what's me and what's you. I don't know what's in and what's out. Like there's a chaos. that we experience. And because there's not an integration of self, because there's not a centeredness and a coherence and alignment of self, that's when we start feeling threatened. And so these moments when we're calling for boundaries, it's kind of a band-aid fix rather than getting to the core of the issue. So the boundaries can protect us on a certain level, but we're not dealing with the root cause for the need for those boundaries. I'd say the boundaries are good training wheels as we're learning to become more coherent. But when our energy is in alignment, when we are coherent, when we have some kind of organizational structure, then the need for those boundaries kind of dissolves because we're coherent. So the visualization that recently arose for me in trying to have this conversation with folks is, rather than these walls, which then become our own imprisonment, speaking from experience, I mean, even at like 12 years old, I wrote a poem saying, I live in a castle surrounded by a moat and I'm protected, but I can't get out. And I think we build castles for ourselves in so many ways. And those castles can become hell for us because we're trapped. And so this image for coherence that recently arose is a golden lattice of light. So sort of a light grid that has it's like an armature. It's got some kind of structure, but this lattice of light has the ability to move and is fluid and can be responsive, and certain things can get through and other things can't, that it's not really a barrier, but it has this fluidity, it has this vitality to it. Good morning, Dido. So good to have you here with us. Welcome. So this lattice of light, if we can imagine, it's almost like how I imagine DNA, just being able to move around, and it adapts in a certain way, but it also has its own inherent organization, its own inherent structure. And when we think about the need for boundaries or protection, when we're feeling vulnerable, what again I'm imagining in terms of energy is that our energy is all diffused and chaotic. And what we're calling to do is to pull that energy back into some kind of organization, some kind of integration and alignment. So another useful visualization might be the difference between gas and liquid, where gas is all over the place and liquid is more organized, more aligned. And I'm not using solid as an example here because there's a certain rigidity to that. But with water flows, right? Liquid has a movement to it, and can adapt, but it still remains liquid. It can respond, but it still remains liquid. And there's a coherence. This notion of coherence, if you allow yourself to feel into it, which I really invite, imagine bringing your molecules or electrons or whatever, bringing your energy into sort of a ribbon, into an organization, into this lattice of light. So Shosha says, interestingly, just learned that electric fences to keep animals safe but don't hurt won't work on birds, only on animals whose feet are grounded on earth. For us stuck in beliefs? Question it, Mark. Fascinated by this. That's really interesting. Really interesting. I imagine that if the birds were walking, that it would probably impact them. But as long as they're not on the ground, because the earth has its own magnetic energy, right? And I guess the electricity is being transmitted through that grounded energy. Interesting. Thanks for sharing that. I think we can also think about like why even be concerned about this? And I like the idea of the bird, because the idea here is that we want to be able to fly, we want to be able to expand, we want to be able to grow and to connect with those things that we want to connect with, that we want to be in alignment with and in tune with, right? And so this lattice of light gives us the opportunity kind of to fly versus the idea of a fortress, which is very solid and very bounded and very constrained. And this goes to a conversation of the paradigm of separation that we live in, that we have been so entrained to for centuries and centuries as human beings, where there's a threat, we need to protect ourselves, we create boundaries, we other others, we even other ourselves by separating ourselves from ourselves in so many ways, by denying our emotions, denying our physicality, judging our appearance, judging our worthiness, judging the worthiness of others. It just goes on and on and on. And it is this paradigm of separation and otherness that is very, very intimately entwined with the paradigm of scarcity and lack, because with this othering, it's a place of comparison. So I'm comparing, do you have more than I do? Do I have more than you do? We're in this comparison sort of thing because we're threatened, and we accumulate to give ourselves greater security. And this is a pattern of being that reaches out into everything that we see and do. It reaches out into every dimension of our reality. And so if we can instead connect with this notion of this lattice of light, the beauty of that is that while there's a definition, it doesn't have sharp edges. Like there's the ability to move and shift and to connect that isn't there in the fortress kind of paradigm or notion. And as light is both focused and diffuse all at the same time, right? It's doesn't have a sharp edge. Even when you have a focused light, there's still mutability around the edges. Things it can change and has the inner integrity also in the context of that change. So the other thing about light is bringing light to darkness, right? Light illuminates. And we so desperately, maybe desperately isn't the best word, but we, I believe, are evolving to another state of being, another foundational conceptualization of the world that is based in unity and oneness. And moving into that, it helps because we're meaning making machines in some respect. It helps to have a different way to conceptualize our beingness, our relationships. And if we can recognize ourselves as manifest light or energy, which I think is actually the truth of it, then rather than something materially solid, even though that we have lots to validate that experience, certainly, then we can recognize our connection to everything. And we can do that anyway. It just takes a lot more effort, I think. The light visualization makes it very accessible. And when I allow myself to sort of dive into that, then there's an expansiveness that happens. There's an ease. And I wonder if you feel something similar as you allow yourself to just breathe into that idea, that visualization, that experience. Like if we are light and this lattice of living light, how does that feel different than I'm a material thing? Even as our material forms, one of the ways that we can recognize that we are not bounded beings, even though it might appear that way, is just by using our senses, just by recognizing that our sight, the way that our sight is working, is by connecting to whatever it is we're seeing. There's the perception and interpretation that's occurring for whatever we're seeing, but that sight is an interrelationship. Whatever we're hearing, it's a relationship. Whatever we're touching, even if it's our own hands, it's a relationship, it's a connection. And I believe the more we can do to nurture this sense of connection and interconnectedness, the more we can grow and evolve into a way of being that creates greater harmony, that isn't necessarily focused on separation and scarcity. When we're connected, there is abundance, right? When we're connected, we're unbounded. There's unlimited access, right? That we're integrated into a greater whole. We can recognize that we're both individuated and unified, individuated and inseparable. So it's a very different practice if we are to recognize that in seeing that thing, I am part of that thing. We are connected. We are interacting. It's not a separate thing because I'm receiving whatever the experience is of that thing. So Dido says, as a Quaker, we talk of the inner light, but I love you sharing about our integration to the matrix of light. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Dido. This is actually something that I'm just becoming present to right now is, this notion of our senses. And we've been acclimated to believe that we're sensing something external. But by the action of sensing, there's an inseparable connection between whatever our experience is and whatever it is we're experiencing. If it is external, it becomes internal. It becomes part of us. When I'm seeing something, when I'm touching something, smelling it, tasting it, imagining it, connecting energetically with it, the thing is that there's no separation. That thing is intricately intertwined with the senses and the experience and the interpretation. So in that perception, we are one. It's just kind of dawning on me on a visceral level right now that this is actually, we can't really dispute it. That whatever we're sensing and experiencing, there's an interrelationship that's undeniable. Whatever there is there, if there's a there, whatever there is meeting with whatever there is here, again, if there's a here, to create something that is a combination of the two, that is inseparable. If there are indeed two. Shosha says, beautiful. Thank you. I mean, this is kind of a revelation. We, at least in my experience, the senses are to perceive and receive the external world. But the truth is that there's no experience of the external world if there is an external world, without that exchange, without that connection. And there's no way to separate the that from the this. even when we're trying to do scientific experiments and isolating things from us, it's still us that is creating the perception, that is creating the experience that we at some point experience, even if it is to interpret the data. So when I'm looking at a piece of paper, it's me being a piece of paper or connecting with whatever that is. It can't exist separate from me because it's my perception interacting with it that makes it real. It's funny how sometimes you get an idea or an understanding and it starts out as a glimmer or a flicker that then becomes a glimmer that then becomes maybe a pinpoint of light, and then that might grow. That's what this feels like, is sort of the dawning of a new awareness, to say there is all the there that's there doesn't exist without our connection, that it's not separate. It can't be separate, because the only way I know it is in my experience of it. So play with this idea, and see how it can shift your experience of connection. That's today's invitation. I am so grateful for this opportunity. I say it every day, but truly, I'm grateful for the opportunity to play through these musings, because sometimes there are revelations for me too. It's like, it's really enlivening. Anyway, that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to please like, follow, and share Enlightened World Network and me. The links are in the description. And again, I receive this as such a gift. And until next time.